day, Philippines. I am Jeremy Hangan, your news reporter. Learning objectives. Understand the rapid expansion of Arabs in the 7th and 8th centuries. Discuss the empires of Arab and describe the successors of each empire. Determine the similarities and differences of Islamic civilization and other ancient civilizations. After the death of Prophet Muhammad, the four major caliphate was established. It is a form of government ruled by a caliph, from the Arabic "Khalifa" means successor, Rashidun, Umayyad, Abbasid, and Ottoman Caliphate. These four caliphate ended with the abolishment of Turkish Republic. First caliphate established after Muhammad's death was the Rashidun Caliphate. Rashidun means rightly guided. The four caliphs Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali was the rightly guided caliphs. They are the four successors of Prophet Muhammad but not considered as a continuation of prophethood itself, because according to Muhammad's followers, the prophet was the last prophet of God. The death of Muhammad in 632 CE was a tragic loss for his followers. They even refused to accept that their prophet was gone. It also became a dilemma for his followers because he did not mention any successors. He had several daughters, but he left no sons, especially that they are in a male-oriented society, in which men hold power and dominate roles in social, economic, and political affairs. Because of that, there are some who became false prophets and even apostates. After Muhammad's death, a number of his closest followers selected Abu Bakr, a wealthy merchant from Medina who was Muhammad's father-in-law and the first male convert, which earned him the nickname of Siddiq, means trustworthy. But some group of Muslims did not agree for Abu Bakr to be a caliph. This group is called Shi'at Ali. They are the party of Ali who pushed for Ali as the only legitimate candidate for the caliphate, but Abu Bakr's authority prevailed. Despite the disagreements, Abu Bakr showed his ability as a natural leader. He called all able-bodied faithful men to arms for jihad. Muslims use the word jihad to describe three different kinds of struggle: a believer's internal struggle to live out the Muslim faith as well as possible, the struggle to build a good Muslim society, and holy war, which means the struggle to defend Islam with force if necessary. He knew that though his enemies were superior, they were disunited, and he used that opportunity to its fullest. He divided the Muslim army into multiple corps and sent each to subjugate a particular part of the Arabian Peninsula. This became the Ridda Wars. Ridda Wars in 632 to 633 CE, or the Wars of Apostasy, is a series of military engagements between the armies of the Rashidun Caliphate and the renegade tribes of Arabia. The rebellious Arabian tribes declared that their pact with Muhammad was of personal nature and that they felt no obligation to serve the new empire. The most notable general of these wars was Khalid ibn al-Walid. He defeated Musailima's forces in the Battle of Yamama in 632 CE. Musaylima was one of the apostates and the false prophets that posed an imminent threat to the very existence of Islam, and is referred by the Muslims as the Arch Lion. During that battle, Musaylima was killed by Khalid despite being heavily outnumbered. By the end of the Ridda Wars, the whole of the Arab Peninsula was united, and for this Abu Bakr is referred to as the second founder of Islam. As a wise caliph, Abu Bakr knew exactly where to go next. The neighboring lands of Syria and Iraq, which were under Byzantine and Sasanian rule. Both of these empires had exhausted themselves because of constant war, and Abu Bakr grabbed that opportunity. He sent armies to both of these provinces to extend his dominion over the Arabian tribes. Khalid was sent to Iraq. As you can see on the map, it shows Khalid's invasion of Iraq was very successful, although he did kill captive soldiers brutally. On the other hand, the Byzantine Emperor Heraclius realized that these attacks were not mere raids and prepared for an effective counterattack. Sensing it, Abu Bakr ordered Khalid to leave Iraq and move to Syria. Khalid showed his military genius. He picked his best men and camels and traveled all the way to Syria. When he entered Syria, he began raiding Byzantine territories and defeated the Byzantines in the Battle of Ajnadayn. Abu Bakr did not live long enough to enjoy these successes. for he died of natural causes soon afterwards. Abu Bakr preferred Umar ibn Khattab to be his successor. Umar was one of the many influential men who supported him during his reign. Umar was also a senior companion of Muhammad, who was known for his fiery temper and unwavering stance for justice. Umar continued Abu Bakr's campaigns, and the year 636 CE brought two major victories for the Caliphate. The city of Jerusalem was peacefully and bloodlessly surrendered to Umar. In his 10-year reign, he maintained a tight grip over his empire, and to this day he is remembered as the most famous of the four caliphates. He introduced diwan, a primitive bureaucracy, which was responsible for paying soldiers their salaries and pensions. Umar also safeguarded newly conquered locals from looting by his armies by keeping armed forces separate from the rest of the population. He introduced many reforms and institutions such as the police, courts, and parliaments, and he also introduced the Islamic calendar started from the year of Hijrah, which is the migration of Muhammad from Mecca to Medina. But all of the qualities he had, no one are as praised as much as his love for justice. He earned the title Farouk, or the one who distinguishes between right and wrong. Later on, Umar was assassinated as an act of vengeance by a Persian slave named Lulu in 634 CE, who was humiliated by the defeat of the Persians. Umar appointed a committee of 6 members (shura in Arabic) to choose his successor. It narrowed the options down to two people, Uthman ibn Affan and Ali ibn Abi Talib. Eventually, Uthman was chosen as his successor. He was from the wealthy clan of Umayyad and a close friend of Muhammad, and was also honored with the title of Ghani, or the generous, because of his charitable acts. Uthman continued the campaigns of his predecessors. During his reign, the whole of Egypt was consolidated, and some territories of Persia were gained. But despite all the success, Uthman was not as famous as the other caliphate. Because of the constant war, economical issues occurred, and this angered the general population. Other than that, Uthman was blamed for promoting his own kinsmen to important positions, and was also charged with blasphemy, which an accusation which was proven false. Sadly, the caliph was murdered in his own house in 656 CE by rebel soldiers from the garrison city of Fusca. He was reading the Quran when his assailants struck him. His cousin Muawiyah, which is the governor of the Syria, offered him a complete protection in Syria, but Uthman refused to leave the city of Medina. Ali, who had remained under the shadows of his seniors up to that point, advising them in the matters of the state, finally became the next caliph. But the unity of the Muslims had died with Uthman. Muawiyah, now the head of the Umayyad clan, yearned for revenge, but Ali failed to provide justice to his dead predecessor, owing to increasing unrest and destabilization, because Ali wished to restore order first. Not content with anything less than justice, Muawiyah, alongside many other prominent Muslims, declared open rebellion, the first civil war of the Islamic Empire, the first fitna. In 656 CE, Ali faced an army led by Aisha, the youngest wife of Prophet Muhammad, at Basra in Iraq. Although he emerged victorious in what was later coined as the Battle of Canaan, and there was little else that he could have done in that situation, his reputation was heavily stained as he was now blamed for having shed Muslim blood, something that Uthman had refused to do. He then marched to Syria, where in the following year he faced Muawiyah in the Battle of Siffin, which ended as a stalemate. The latter continued to defy the former's authority. Ali also made the controversial move of shifting the capital from Medina to Kufa, a garrison city in modern-day Iraq. Ali was failing as a ruler. The expansion of the empire had halted, and the Muslims were now at each other's throats. While Ali was still ruling from Kufa, Muawiyah had himself declared caliph in Jerusalem. The Islamic Empire had two caliphs at once. This changed when Ali was murdered by an extremist group called the Kharijites. The Kharijites were initially his allies, but his ultimate decision to reach a compromise with Muawiyah enraged them. Ali punished the Kharijites' betrayal by attacking them with full military might, and now this extremist group was vying for vengeance. They assassinated the Caliph while he was offering prayer in congregation in 661 CE. He had not achieved much as a ruler, but both Sunni and Shia Muslims unanimously agree that Ali was a good person and a true Muslim at heart. He did make errors in judgment during his tenure, which cost him a great deal, but to this day he is venerated for his unaffected piety, proverbial wisdom, and bravery on the battlefield, and he earned the nickname of Asad Allah, the Lion of God. The Kharijites had also attempted to kill Muawiyah, but he survived with only a minor injury and then established the Umayyad dynasty. Umayyad dynasty was the first dynasty to take the title of Caliphate. It was established in 661 CE by Muawiyah, who had served as the governor of Syria under the Rashidun Caliphate. After the death of the fourth Caliph, Ali, in 661 CE, the Umayyads ruled effectively and firmly established the political authority of the Caliphate. Rebellions were crushed with brute force, and no pardon was given to those who stirred uprisings. Muslim fleets attacked several islands in the eastern Mediterranean and crossed the Strait of Gibraltar. It was also the time when Visigothic kingdom collapsed. Visigothic kingdom was a Western European power in the 5th to 8th centuries. It controlled the strongest kingdom in Western Europe. 7 years later, an Arab force making a foray into southern France was defeated by the army of Charles Martel between Tours and Poitiers. Byzantine Empire was considered to be the primary adversary of Arab. Since Byzantine Empire possessed a powerful fleet, many of the battles would take place at sea, and it became a disadvantage for the Arabs. It is because of lacking protected harbors and sources of wood and iron for ships, and little experience in maritime warfare. Since Arabs were quick to learn, they were able to seize a number of islands in the Mediterranean. In 717, a Muslim force launched an attack on Constantinople with the hope of destroying the Byzantine Empire. But still, Byzantine Empire destroyed the Muslim fleet. It is because of the usage of Greek fire, a petroleum-based compound containing quicklime and sulfur. Finally, in 750, the Umayyad was overthrown because of a revolt led by Abu al-Abbas, and it was the establishment of the Abbasid in what is now Iraq. The Abbasids raised the slogan of giving the al-Bayt their true right, the caliphal throne. The interesting thing in this matter is that the rebels never specified exactly what they meant by al-Bayt. Shia Muslims refer to the family of Ali by this name, whereas the Abbasids were referring to themselves as such. The Abbasid caliphs brought political, economic, and cultural change to the world of Islam, seeking to implant their own version of religious orthodoxy to be known as Sunni or the law. They opened schools known as madrasas. Madrasas offer a free education, room, and board to their students, and thus they appeal to impoverished families and individuals. These religious schools are supported by private donations from Muslim believers through a process of almsgiving known in Arabic as zakat, which is included in the five pillars of Islam. Caliph Harun al-Rashid was the most prominent ruler of the Abbasid dynasty. Even stripped of his legendary status in stories and fables, the actual man still had an unparalleled personality. He was a patron of arts and learning, and wished for Muslims to lead the world in that matter. His reign marks the start of the golden age of learning, although Harun was not himself interested in administering the state. He did ensure that such a delicate task be given to the most talented and honest of men. The map shows the Abbasid Caliphate at the height of its power. As you can see, there are countries recognizing Abbasid sovereignty. There are also territory disputed between Seljuks and Byzantine Empire. The Abbasid Caliphate was at greatest extent during rule of Harun al-Rashid. At Harun's death, the rivalry between his sons Amin and al-Mamun led to civil war and destruction of Baghdad. In 762, the Abbasids built a new capital city at Baghdad on the Tigris River far to the east of the Umayyad capital at Damascus. As described by the 10th century Muslim historian Al-Masudi, mansions were destroyed, most remarkable monuments obliterated, Prices soared, brother turned his sword against brother, son against father, as some fought for Amin, others for Mammon. Houses and palaces fueled the flames, property was put to the sack. Financial corruption occurred because some members of Harun's clan received large pensions from the state treasury. Even his wife Zubaida reportedly spent big amount of money while shopping on a pilgrimage to Mecca. Because of the wealthy and comfortable life experienced by the Caliph and other political and economic elites in Baghdad, it ruined the stern fiber of Arab society and even the strict moral code of Islam. Caliphs were rumored to maintain thousands of concubines in their harem. Divorce was common, homosexuality was wide practice, and even alcohol was consumed in public. Environmental problems also occurred, in which Tigris and Euphrates river systems began to sit up. And because some canals became unusable, it leads to widespread food shortages. In the 11th century, the Abbasid Caliphate faced another serious threat because of Seljuk Turks. Seljuk Turks are military mercenaries known for their ability as mounted archers. They migrated westward into Xinjiang and Central Asia when the nomadic Shungnu Empire fell apart. Their Turkish leader captured Baghdad and held the title of Sultan, which means holder of power. Even though the Abbasid Caliph remained the chief representative of Sunni religious authority, the real military and political power was in the hands of Seljuk. As Baghdad entered a period of decline, it was no longer the gift of God. The Battle of Kostab in 1242, Seljuk autonomy was lost forever. For a time, the Seljuk Sultanate continued as a Mongol province, although some Turkmen emirs maintained small principalities of their own in distant mountainous districts. Seljuk dynasty died out at last early in the 14th century. The Crusades, a series of military campaigns organized by popes and Christian Western powers to take Jerusalem and the Holy Land back from Muslim control and then defend those gains. There were eight major official crusades between 1095 and 1270, as well as many more unofficial ones. This crusade was a military campaign by Western European forces to recapture the city of Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim control. The Second Crusade was a military campaign organized by the Pope and the European nobles to recapture the city of Edessa in Mesopotamia, which had fallen in 1144 CE to the Muslim Seljuk Turks. The Third Crusade was launched to retake Jerusalem after its fall to the Muslim leader Saladin in 1187 CE. The most glamorous of all the campaigns, this time there were two Western kings and an emperor in command, hence its other name of the King's Crusade. The three big names were Frederick Barbarossa, King of Germany and Holy Roman Emperor, Philip II of France, and Richard the Lion-Hearted of England. Fourth Crusade was called by Pope Innocent III to retake Jerusalem from its current Muslim overlords. In a bizarre combination of cock-ups, financial constraints, and Venetian trading ambitions, the target ended up being Constantinople, capital of the Byzantine Empire and the greatest Christian city in the world. Fourth Crusade thus gained its infamous reputation as the most cynical and profit-seeking of all the crusades. The Fifth Crusade was called by Pope Innocent III with the objective, like previous crusades, of recapturing Jerusalem from Muslim control. Only this time, the strategy was to weaken the enemy by first attacking Muslim-held cities in North Africa and Egypt, then controlled by the Ayyubid dynasty. The idea that Egypt would be an easier target than Jerusalem proved to be mistaken, and the campaign was not successful. Defeated on the banks of the Nile, the Crusaders returned home once again with very little to show for their efforts. The Sixth Crusade, which for many historians was merely the delayed final chapter of the unsuccessful Fifth Crusade, finally saw the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II arrive with his army in the Holy Land as he had long vowed to do. Jerusalem had been out of Christian hands since 1187 CE, but was finally won back from Muslim control because of Frederick's skills at diplomacy rather than any actual fighting. Thus, the Sixth Crusade managed to achieve by peaceful means what four bloody previous crusades had failed to do. The Seventh Crusade was led by the French king Louis IX, who intended to conquer Egypt and take over Jerusalem, both then controlled by the Muslim Ayyubid dynasty. Despite the initial success of capturing Damietta on the Nile, the Crusader army was in 1250 CE routed at Mansoura in a repetition of the events of the Fifth Crusade. Louis was captured and then ransomed, but remained determined to fulfill his Crusader vows, launching the Eighth Crusade. The Eighth Crusade was like the Seventh Crusade, led by the French King Louis IX. Previously, the idea was to attack and defeat the Muslims first in Egypt, and then either reconquer or negotiate control of key Christian sites in the Levant, including Jerusalem. Tunis was decided upon as the first target from where the Crusaders could then attack Egypt. Japan was dealt the fatal blow of the king's death from illness in August 1270 CE, and the campaign was abandoned before it had even properly begun. Founded by Genghis Khan, first great Khan or universal ruler of the Mongol people. Pastoral nomads of the Asian steppe who herded sheep, goats, horses, camels, and yaks, mostly dairy-based with cheese, yogurt, butter, and dried milk curds or kurut being staples. Religious belief of the Mongols. Mix of animism, a belief in innumerable spiritual beings, ancestor worship, and shamanism. Historian Christianity, in which denies the reality of the Incarnation and represents Christ as a God-inspired man rather than as God-made man. There was also a widespread belief in the principal two deities, the earth or mother goddess, known as Etogen, who represented fertility, Tengri, the blue sky or eternal heaven. Sign of Baghdad, perhaps the brightest star in the Muslim firmament, was in Spain, where Abd al-Rahman, a member of Umayyad dynasty that had managed to establish himself after his family's rule in the Middle East, had been overthrown in 750 CE. Al-Andalus is especially significant because it brought an Islamic presence directly into Europe, which took over nearly all of Spain for a period of time and spread far and wide through Europe. Islamic civilization. In this topic, we will be focusing on the geography, economy, politics, sociology, and philosophy of Islamic civilization. The Islam started in Mecca during the life of Prophet Muhammad, in which he received the divine revelation from their Allah through Archangel Gabriel. As we all know, Arabs are mostly settled in deserts, but there are also rivers that is very helpful for them, like Tigris, the Euphrates, and the Nile. Next is economy. So the Arab Empire are more urbanized than most other areas. Urban buildings like palace of caliphs or local governor and great mosques are built. Houses were often constructed of stones or brick on a timber frame. Larger houses were often built around an interior courtyard where the residents could retreat from the dust, noise, and heat of the city streets. The houses of the wealthy were often multi-storied, with balconies and windows covered with latticed work to provide privacy, while the poor in both urban and rural areas lived in simpler houses composed of clay or unfired bricks. They are also into trading, in which they trade sugar, salt, textiles, spices, slaves, gold, and horses. Because of the expansion of Islamic empire, it allowed merchants to trade goods all the way from China to Europe, and also merchants became quite wealthy that enables them to be part of the upper class. And they are into farming. Some population continued to live in the countryside, supported by farming in which they herd animals. Most of the farmland was owned by independent peasants, but some were owned by wealthy owners, and some lands were also owned by the state or the court and cultivated by slaves. Next is their political status. They have the form of government called caliphate. It is ruled by a caliph or successor, and is regarded as the religious and political successor to the Prophet Muhammad. Hereditary system was also practiced during the Umayyad. Caliphate, which is their leaders are mostly from their clan. Next is sociology. In Islamic civilization, they are egalitarian, in which they are all equal in the eyes of Allah. There are also upper class consists of ruling families, senior officials, tribal elites, and merchants. And slavery was also widespread. They also practice polygamy, that is usually takes the form of polygyny, in which a man marries multiple women. Men are also prohibited from social contacts with males outside their own family. This is according to the Quran, which requires women to guard their modesty. Practice of covering the face and body of women whenever they appeared in public prevailed in many Muslim societies. Harem was also introduced at the Abbasid court during the reign of Harun al-Rashid. A harem is a part of a house set apart for women and from which non-family males are excluded. Is the philosophy. Islamic was responsible for preserving and spreading of scientific and philosophical achievements. Islamic philosophy is intimately connected with Greek philosophy. Muslim scholars stored copies and translations in libraries in Baghdad, Alexandria, and elsewhere in the Arab world that many classical Greek writings survive. They believed in God or Allah, God's devotees, and the divine revelation that had been gave to the prophets, and human has a potency within the development of morality and spirituality. They also have the holy book called the Quran that was revealed to Muhammad over a period of 23 years. The five pillars of Islam. First is the profession of faith or Shahada, the belief that there is no God but God and Muhammad is the messenger of God is central to Islam. Second is prayer or Salat. Muslims pray facing Mecca 5 times a day, at dawn, noon, mid-afternoon, sunset, and after dark. Third is alms or zakat. Muslims donate a fixed portion of their income to community members in need. Fourth is fasting or Psalm. During the daylight hours of Ramadan, the ninth month of the Islamic calendar, all healthy adult Muslims are required to abstain from food and drink. The last pillar, the pilgrimage or Hajj. Every Muslim whose health and finances permit must make at least one visit to the holy city of Mecca. Islamic literature. The Quran, or the Holy Book of Islam, which contains the teachings of Allah. Thousand and One Nights, or the Arabian Nights, contains folk tales compiled in Arabic during the Islamic Golden Age. And Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Islamic art and architecture. The art of Islam is a blend of Arab, Turkish, and Persian traditions. Even up to this day, Arab is really best when it comes to architecture.